You're listening to the JD Rucker Show. Let's begin. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the JD Rucker Show. I'm your host, JD Rucker, and I have to say that because we are now officially on Patriot TV. Super excited about that. And an apology right off the bat to my viewers on Patriot TV because Friday we had a technical difficulty. I'm still getting used to the learning the ropes and all that stuff. So even though my show played on my channel, which you can get to at jdrucker.com/rumble, it played there, but it did not play on Patriot TV. So hopefully, Lord willing, you are watching this on Patriot TV and you'll be like, okay, great. So what do we miss? And one of the things that you missed on Friday is that I did basically an introduction to me for those who aren't aware of who I am. Unfortunately, since it didn't air to the target audience, because people that watch me on my channel know me very well, I'm going to have to do a little bit of a repeat, so if you're on my channel, don't worry, it'll be short. I just want to give a brief overview of me so that the audience of Patriot TV knows who they're listening to. So I think the area where I am primarily well known would be the Liberty Daily. That's where thelibertydaily.com is it's a medium traffic. I wouldn't call it high traffic. It's not like Drudge Report, but as far as traffic wise, but the style, when you go there, you'll see it's very much like Drudge Report. The difference is that it's actually conservative. It actually doesn't hate America. We try to put America First stories up there all day, every day, 365 days a year, 366 on leap years. And I work there every day, usually in the evenings. On weekends, I run the site by myself, solo, but during the week, I take over at 5 p.m., and my trusted Monday through Friday cohort runs it during the day. But we are on almost 24 hours a day. We have it sort of, there's a couple of gaps in there during nap time. But other than that, we do very, very well to try to keep on top of the news. Breaking, not breaking, just important stories that patriots need to read. And we get anywhere from 11 to 13 million hits a month. Again, it's a mid-sized site, and it does very well. And this gives me access to some really cool people. I will admit, part of the allure of the gig of editing the Liberty Daily is having people, relatively popular people in the conservative movement, especially in conservative and alternative media, reaching out to share their stories with me. And it's great because we're usually the first stop where they get a breaking story. They hit me up on various means of communication, text or signal or whatever, telegram, email sometimes, and that gives us a bit of a heads up so we can get the stories out as quickly as possible, just as they're happening. You can also find me over at a couple of my sites, americafirstreport.com, as well as discernreport.com. Those are the two places where I spend most of my editorial time, not editing, but where I'm writing, putting on shows, segments from my shows. Of course, you can find me on X at JD Rucker, and here on Patriot TV, or on my Rumble channel, or on my YouTube, or X, or BitChute, or Getter, or any of the various places. Truth Social, places where we do broadcast this show. We're trying to get as much as possible back up on Apple Podcasts. I'd taken a break from using Apple Podcasts for a while, and I would say that's a mistake. I messed up there. My Substack, which is, I think, probably my favorite place because we only put the best stuff there. I don't put, I might publish the Liberty Daily. We might publish 150 to 200 articles a day. Over on my sites at America First Report and Discern Report, we might publish 5, 10, 15 per day. But my Substack, one or two, maybe in a busy week, I might get 3 or 4 up there. And so we really only put the best of the best. And if you want to get to receive that, it's free. You can only support me, but you don't have to. You still get it all for free. jdrucker.substack.com. Contacting me is easy. Go to jdrucker.com/talk, jdrucker.com/talk, or hit me up on Twitter or X. I have open DMs there at JD Rucker. So that's me in a nutshell. As far as what I talk about, my preference would be to talk about the Bible all day, every day. That's, someday, Lord willing, I'll be able to do that. I'm not a pastor or anything like that. I'm just talking about, and I'm not going to be that guy that's going to be, open your Bibles to Ephesians 6:11. That's not me. I'm more along the lines of talking about the gospel, talking about maybe some things that are misunderstood, that I feel that I have some input when it comes to the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, the whole thing. Unfortunately, for now, that's not where I can put my focus, because I have to make a living. That maybe if I get rich someday, I'll go ahead and focus solely on the Bible. But I have this general rule, and this is something that my wife and I both agreed upon for a very long time, for over 2 decades, that if I'm doing anything biblically, I'm not doing it for money. So in other words, I'm not going to do a Bible study show, which we used to do. Together. We would do a Bible study show, and I'm not going to put ads on there or monetize it in any way. That's not the purpose. So, and I think I know there's a lot of people that do that. I'm not trying to rip on anybody else. For me, it is important that I don't allow worldly considerations into any discussions that I have regarding the Bible. That's all. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. He's already paid the ultimate price. I can't ask for a single penny more. I don't deserve what I've got. Okay? So that salvation is worth everything. And there's no need for me or really anybody else to intermingle. And that's, to be clear, people are like, oh, so you're against tithing and stuff like that. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that I'm completely against, anybody supporting themselves through the gospel. If for those out there, pastors, for example, who make their living by helping people to find Jesus, awesome. Okay, I'm not that guy. I don't make my living that way, and maybe someday I could. We'll see. But for now, that is one of the priorities. The other two are culture, because I do believe that the cultural battles that we're fighting are separate from the political battles, which is the third portion of it. Faith, culture, politics. That's the intersection where the JD Rucker Show resides. So when it comes to cultural battles, I think that there are differences. People, I think sometimes, some of you, and a lot of show hosts, sort of conflate cultural with political. And some other shows will conflate cultural with faith-based, with Christianity. And even though there's connections between them, but you still have to address them separately, because the types of battles that we fight are going to be different depending upon which front upon which we're fighting. For example, I have an interview coming up here later in the show with Detransitioner Chloe Cole. We talk about faith, we talk about politics, but we also talk about culture, and we talk about these in separate manners because, again, different types of battles. And the sooner we all recognize that, the sooner we recognize that getting legislation passed is different from winning hearts and minds, is different from giving people or offering people the opportunity to save their souls. These are three very distinct things, even if they're regarding the same topic. Okay? We can talk about the transgender rise of transgender supremacy, LGBTQIA plus mass propaganda that's happening in our society today. We can talk about those things from three separate perspectives. And that's, again, not to say that they don't intermingle. I'm trying not to babble here, but I need to make sure this point is understood. They can intermingle. And they do here on my show. But we still have to treat them distinctly. Because you can win, for example, you can get legislation passed and win that political battle. And we've seen, for example, executive orders about boys and girls sports. But that's not going to change the cultural aspect of things, where there are still a good chunk of people, maybe not a majority, praise God for that, but there still are a good chunk of Americans out there who want biological males, we call them boys or men. They want these boys or men to be competing against girls or women. under the guise of, well, they feel like they claim they're a girl, so they should be able to go out there and defeat all the girls, all the biological girls. That's not true. Okay, so passing the law does not change the hearts and minds of the people that still believe, for whatever reason, out of wokeness, out of mental derangement, out of something, for whatever reason, they think that it's okay. So we have to fight that battle separately. It's a different type of battle. And then, of course, there is the faith aspect of it. Men are born men, women are born women. And that's something that is unambiguous in the Bible. So, making sure that we have all of those different components covered. And that doesn't mean we have to cover all three with every topic. Just so happens that talking to Chloe Cole here in about, half an hour or so, talking to her does bring all three together in a very nice collision. I think a very important collision. So praise God for her coming on the show, and I think that you're going to really enjoy that. We're also going to be talking about other things. A busy weekend, okay? China tariffs. We're cutting deals there. India, Pakistan, making peace deals there. You know, you got the radical Democrats out there getting arrested. I mean, it was a big weekend. It's unfortunate that I had so many stories to get to that needed to get gotten to, and then the interview, because I could fill 3 hours just talking about the events of this weekend, things that happened with the Trump administration. But don't worry, you'll have plenty. Everybody's going to be talking about those things, so there's no need for me to throw my voice into that particular arena, at least not today. Maybe tomorrow we'll talk about some of that stuff. I do have an Amazon insider that I want to bring to the table and talk about all that. So great stuff. That is JD Rucker Show in a nutshell. And that's it. So let's get to this. You know what? Let's cut to an ad, then we'll get to the first story. How's that? The biggest challenge with survival food is that it just isn't very good. It doesn't taste very good. It's not very nutritious. The sourcing is questionable. And for a long time, I was really against purchasing a whole bunch of survival food. But a company that I'd found a few years ago, their food was awesome. It was one of the few that I could actually eat, that my family could eat pretty much normally, just like eating regular food. And it was nutritious, grown from heirloom seeds and all that good stuff. I was super impressed with my good friends at Heaven's Harvest. I have since reconnected with them. We still have their buckets of food in my pantry, but I thought, you know what, let's see what they're doing. And they said, hey, let's partner together. So we did. So you can go to jdrucker.com/food, jdrucker.com/food. By going there, it will automatically put in the promo code for the discount that you'll receive at Heaven's Harvest. So check it out. See what sort of foods they have, and see what you like there. Because I can assure you this, compared to other survival foods, this is like super gourmet awesome. Elizabeth Warren takes on egg prices, proving once again that she may be the dumbest member of the United States Senate. And that says a lot. I mean, there are some pretty stupid people in the United States Senate. She might be the worst. And there was a time when she was considered to be like this super genius Harvard lady, whatever, but she just, I mean, she makes these unforced errors that demonstrate, I don't know, it's either she's lost it or she's never had it or whatever. I don't know. But here's a post that she put on X on Saturday. No, this is Friday. Egg prices are through the roof, and giant egg producers are raking in record profits. Working families deserve to know if those sky-high prices are because of out-of-control corporate greed. Senator Banks and I are pressing the Justice Department to get answers. Oh my gosh. She's replying to a post, or reposting something from ABC News. A bipartisan pair of senators applaud the Justice Department's ongoing investigation into major egg producers over rising prices and called on the department to look even further into the issue in a letter to Assistant Attorney General Gail Slater. Community Notes, this isn't up yet, I'm going to vote for it probably, but Community Notes shows that according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Egg Market Overview from May 9th, 2025, the average advertised retail price for a dozen large shell eggs dropped by 69 cents to $3.30, a significant decrease from earlier in the year. In other words, the data doesn't back Senator Warren's claim. Imagine that. She's trying to get everybody riled up over egg prices, denying the fact that egg prices are dropping. And for a visual, we turn to the red-headed libertarian who aptly said, "Are you being intentionally retarded, or can you not read data?" And there's the data on the screen showing earlier this year. This is a 6-month view. Yes, egg prices skyrocketed for a while until March, and they've been pretty much stable ever since. Right? I mean, that's the data. This is the hill upon which Elizabeth Warren apparently wants to die on, because she just keeps harping about corporate greed, corporate greed, corporate greed, not paying any attention, of course, to the fact that during the 4 years under the Biden-Harris regime, she wasn't complaining about anybody's greed. She wasn't complaining about massive inflation, skyrocketing prices across the board. She didn't say anything about the culling of over 100 million chickens. No. At that point, she's just like, "Oh, well, hi, blah, 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 blah." I don't even know what she says. She's just dumb. And I guess, in a way, maybe being an idiot about eggs is giving her cover so that she doesn't have to fall on her sword and jump on the other bandwagon, with many of her other Democrat cohorts picking their hill to die on, being the defense of MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Actor Hugh Grant laments children today being addicted to screens. Anybody who's ever watched my show, you know I'm not a fan of Hollywood. There's a handful of actors. You got James Woods, Jon Voight, occasionally Denzel Washington, but for the most part, the vast majority of actors, at least publicly, are extraordinarily leftist, radical, and narcissistic and everything else. I didn't picture Hugh Grant. I don't know much about his politics, but I did not picture him as being a guy who would come out with and make sense. But sometimes they do. Sometimes, even if they're on the left, sometimes they find something, and it's like a boom, something pops in their head, and they make sense about a topic. In this video that I'm about to play, this comes from Children's Health Defense. I don't know if they got him to do it or if they just clipped it or whatever, but he makes sense.
It's been very, very depressing watching big tech kidnap their lives, and to see children really finding it very, very difficult to get properly interested in anything that isn't a screen, swarming like blue bottles around any screen that appears in the room instantly and tragically. Or if you take them on some fun outing, within 6 minutes, and I'm sure a lot of the people on this webinar have had the same experience who have kids, 20 minutes in, 45 minutes in, can we go home now? Can we go home now? Can we go home now? Because they're so desperate to get back to a screen. And the exhausting nature of parenthood under these circumstances, year after year, month after month, day after day, fighting the children. No, give that back. Or no, we agreed you could have 20 minutes on Saturday and you've had half an hour. On and on. Why are you going to see Tommy and not Johnny? It's because we know Tommy's allowed endless screen time, and it's shattering. And so it was extremely surprising and extremely depressing when you get emails from the school about, or the new school you've sent your kid to, saying proudly, "And we give all our children their own Chromebook or their own iPad." And you just think, what? How could that be a good idea? If school is for anything, surely they deserve just 6 hours off from their addiction, from this crazy addiction.
Why is there no discussion about defunding Planned Parenthood through reconciliation? We have the power, we being the Republicans, we have the power to do so. This should be an absolute positive no-brainer. Done deal. All right? It should be assumed that defunding Planned Parenthood is part of the budget bill, the reconciliation bill. We don't need a single Democrat to defund Planned Parenthood. If Planned Parenthood continues to get funding, then it will be because of the Republicans. So is that why we're not getting much discussion about it? I mean, the House put out their budget plan over the weekend, And maybe it's in there, maybe not. I would assume it's not, because you would think that this would be big news if it had been in there. But for whatever reason, very few people are talking about this, and it's a disgrace. Planned Parenthood, the abortion business, now also the transgender affirming care, hormone distributing whatever business, they should not be getting taxpayer funds. They can raise their own money, to be clear. Okay, they're very similar to a lot of these pet projects from the left and some from the right that don't need a single taxpayer dime in order to survive. In fact, they would probably do better, one would argue, through their own fundraising by demonic means or whatever you want to call it. But it's not being discussed. I've been looking for stories about it, and I did find one, came out last week, that seems to maybe point a finger at why few in the House and nobody in the Senate is talking about defunding Planned Parenthood through reconciliation. This article comes to us from Life News. 3 House Republicans reportedly holding up bill to defund Planned Parenthood. This is by Stephen Ertelt and Sarah Holliday over there at Life News. A push to defund Planned Parenthood through a budget reconciliation bill is facing resistance from 3 House Republicans threatening a key pro-life priority. The reconciliation bill, which allows legislation to pass with a simple majority in both chambers, is seen as a critical opportunity to strip federal funding from Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion business. And when we're talking about critical opportunity, this is it, okay? This is the chance to do it. The chance. This is an opportunity that we have not had available to us in the recent past. And you could argue that between 2017 and 2019, early 2019, when the House and Senate were both controlled by Republicans, we could have, should have done it then. We should have. So now that we have a second opportunity, we can't blow it. Back to the article. The abortion company receives nearly $700 million, $700 million in taxpayer funds in its 2022-23 fiscal year, killing 392,715 babies in abortion, according to its annual report. Pro-life advocates argue that redirecting these funds to community health centers would better serve women's health care needs, without supporting an industry they view as responsible for ending unborn lives. However, 3 House Republicans are reportedly hesitant to support including the defunding measure in the reconciliation package, citing concerns over political backlash or the measure's fit within the bill's fiscal focus. In other words, cop-out excuses. I'm going to try not to spit here. This really, really chaps my khakis. This hesitation has sparked frustration among pro-life leaders who see 2025 as a pivotal year with Republican control of the House, the Senate, and the White House aligning for the first time in years. The three reportedly include Representatives Mike Lawler, no surprise there, Jen Keegans, and Brian Fitzpatrick. No surprise there. I don't know much about Keegans, but I know about Lawler and Fitzpatrick, and this sure fits in with their priorities. House Speaker Mike Johnson has voiced support for defunding Planned Parenthood, stating on Fox News that he is, quote, working to build the votes needed to pass such a measure through reconciliation. At the annual gala of the pro-life group Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America last week, Johnson pledged that the reconciliation bill is going to redirect funds away from big abortion. I want a direct quote. I want something that says specifically, we are going to defund Planned Parenthood through reconciliation, and we're going to get every single Republican on board. I don't want any of these. We have a thin majority as it is. I don't want a single one of them to, because here's the thing. Any Republican, so-called Republican, that does not seize the opportunity to defund Planned Parenthood and redirect those funds, well, first, either let's just not spend the funds at all, okay, that would be ideal, but if they've got, we got to replace it with something, then fine, put it towards actual women's health, actual childhood health, not towards the effort of killing babies or transing kids or anything like that. Pretty simple. That otherwise anybody who opposes that shouldn't be considered a Republican at all. However, with a narrow Republican majority, even a small number of holdouts could derail the effort, as no pro-life Democrats are expected to support the measure. And Are there still pro-life Democrats out there, at least amongst politicians? Whatever. Fitzpatrick said we need simplicity in this bill, and this is where we get into the cop-out, and this is really going to make you mad if you read this the way I'm reading it. I think there's other policy areas that we need to focus on. Okay, so walk and chew gum at the same time. These reconciliation bills, these budget bills, these omnibuses, these continuing resolutions, generally speaking, they're huge. It's not like, oh, we're going to focus on a single bill. It's like, on one hand, they say we need to focus on a single bill and not worry about Planned Parenthood. And then on the other hand, they say, let's throw it all in a bill. Which one is it? It's whatever's convenient for them. And in this case, Brian Fitzpatrick, absolute rhino, disgusting rhino, is copping out, saying, oh, well, we need to focus on other things. Okay, it's really easy. You know what? It's like end funding for Planned Parenthood, done. Okay, that didn't take much focus. Okay, I know that he's a member of Congress, which takes his IQ down about 100 points, but I think that a 7 to 10 word addition to the reconciliation bill should not, as an elected official, it should not like blow his mind so much that he's just like, oh my gosh, I can't focus on this. I am just so stupid that I can't, let's just focus on something less complicated like budgets for the defense or something like that. I don't like Brian Fitzpatrick, if you couldn't tell. After news service before this report that the three lawmakers were opposed to defunding Planned Parenthood, a spokesperson for Keegan's said the Congresswoman's position was taken out of context. Congresswoman Keegan's is proudly pro-life and firmly opposes any federal funding for abortion. Okay, so in other words, she's in favor of defunding Planned Parenthood. That should be the next sentence, right? She is in favor of defunding Planned Parenthood through reconciliation. But no, that's not what it says. It says she attended a closed-door policy discussion with House leadership and Republican colleagues focused on Medicaid reform. We're not talking about Medicaid. We're talking about Planned Parenthood. Okay? So stop changing the subject, but again, politicians. Reform within the broader reconciliation process. The Congresswoman supports thoughtful, targeted Medicaid reforms that strengthen the program, preserve its integrity, and ensure it serves those who it originally intended to help. Okay. So where's the sentence that said she's pro-life and she wants to defund Planned Parenthood? She supports defunding Planned Parenthood. Those are the words that need to be in here. Pro-life groups, including Students for Life of America and Family Research Council, have intensified lobbying efforts with hundreds of activists visiting Capitol Hill in recent weeks to press lawmakers. A coalition of over 150 national and state pro-life organizations has called for action, emphasizing that Planned Parenthood's federal funding, primarily through Medicaid, must be redirected. Critics of Planned Parenthood point to reports of mismanagement, and I don't think any of my audience needs to be convinced that this is a good idea to defund them. I'm stopping. John Thune wants it on his desk. Mike Johnson wants it on his desk sooner. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to get too annoyed. This is why I always say, and I've said this about abortion, I'm going to continue this thought as it comes to the radical LGBTQIA plus indoctrination of children. In both cases, this isn't just a political issue. We cannot say, okay, well, Republicans are going to fix this, or we have to, fix this in the state legislatures or whatever. This has to be viewed from the perspective of, we have a faith perspective in both arenas. We have a cultural perspective in both arenas. And yes, we do have a political perspective, but we might not have much that we can do, you and I can do, other than lobbying, calling our congressmen or senators or whatever. We can do a little bit. But when it comes to the cultural side, the faith-driven side, in both cases, Christians should be very vocal about defunding Planned Parenthood. And those who believe from a cultural perspective, outside of the religious side, from a cultural perspective, that both LGBTQIA plus indoctrination as well as murdering of preborn babies, if you believe that those things don't align with your cultural beliefs, the American society's heartbeat, so to speak, from a cultural perspective, then yes, we need to be vocal about it, not just politically. We need to be changing hearts and minds. It is part of our role. I'm going to take a very, very, very short break. And this is a perfect segment to go into today's guest, who is Chloe Cole, a young lady who transitioned. and then detransition, and has become one of the most vocal opponents to the transing of not just children, but of everybody. So I am very excited about this interview, so stay tuned. There's no need to stress about your retirement. I know things are looking really crazy out there with the markets and trade wars and all this other stuff, but there's no need to be checking your portfolio every day. You're seeing, oh my gosh, is it up? Is it down? What's happening? Yeah, you should be looking at your retirement in the long term, and the best way to do that, in my humble opinion, not a financial advisor, but in my humble opinion, the best way to do that is through physical precious metals. But you need to be working with the right company, and you can find the right company by going to jdrgold.com. That's jdrgold.com. Gender. It's a topic that has been at the top of mind for a whole lot of people in recent years. My next guest is somebody who has experienced it. She is now fighting the good fight to try to make everybody aware of the dangers, the risks, the destructive elements of what she calls the gender medical industrial complex. We are very blessed to have Chloe Cole joining us today. Chloe, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I hope you are too.
I'm doing fantastic. You know, I found out that you are younger than two of my children. You are 20 years old. And that to me just blows me away because your presence, and I'm not kissing up to the guest here. This is my honest opinion. Your presence is so far above and beyond your age. I think that is a testament to your mission and perhaps to the blessings that you have received. But for my audience, please, if you would, tell us about you. Take as long as you need. I'm sure most of my audience is very well aware of your story, but those who aren't, they need to hear it. So take us away. Tell us about Chloe.
So, I am an advocate for the rights of children, particularly in the medical space, and the rights of parents and their authority and understanding and love over their children. Mostly hailing from my own experiences as a detransitioner, which is somebody who went through the process of a medical gender transition and came back out of it and returned to their identity as their birth sex. And I personally went through the process. I went through this process while I was still a child, between the ages of 12 to 16 years old. So I went through, I was put on puberty blocking medication, I was put on cross sex hormones, and I eventually underwent a double mastectomy to remove my breasts to try and masculinize me. And at 16 years old, I came out of that decision. And for the past, I would say 3 years, I have been speaking about not only my own experiences, but also connecting to other detransitioners as well, other families, other children, other young men and women who have been harmed by the system, and working with legislation to protect children from these treatments ever happening to them ever again.
An amazing work. You were at the White House recently, weren't you?
I was. I recently had the pleasure of meeting Caroline Levitt as well as some other congressmen and women. And I have been meaning to work with the Trump administration on this issue for a while because, as it is right now, this is something that is a state by state issue. But the problem with that is many other states, such as my own home state of California, are going further and further and further in the opposite direction of progress on this issue, and they're facilitating the further abuse of children and children being ripped away from the custody of their parents and their families, the name of gender affirming care. But I don't believe that any child or any family is going to be safe into the United States until this is completely eradicated from all 50 states and federally.
Yes, and it is a fight that's going to have to take place, as you said, at the state level first, because there's going to be challenges. We're talking about probably years, even with if we have complete control over the House and the Senate. I'm talking 60 senators, complete control over the House. There's still going to be legal challenges that will take it further. We have to get the states going. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. I too am out here stuck in California, and we are in a state that is loaded with contradictions. You'd recently noted in a video that we're going to get to here in a bit, but you recently noted that out here in California, you need IDs and parental consent to get pretty much anything. You can't even go into a tanning booth or a tanning salon. Is that correct?
Right.
If you're a minor, and yet you can start to transition. You can get hormones. You can do all sorts of things. Tell us, you've seen, obviously here in California, but also in other states, you say that things are heading in the wrong direction. Elaborate on that. What's happening here and in other states?
Well, in many states, this systematic abuse of children in our medical system and allowing them to go down this path that is not only developmentally destructive, but I think adult in nature, it is inherently sexual. It affects your sexual development and the way that you experience it on a physiological and emotional level. Certain states like California have also become sanctuary states of sorts, where children from other states can run off either with a parent or on their own in search of transitioning if either one of their parents doesn't approve. And these states will often ignore the custody laws and will not go into investigations for these other states. It's completely wrong. And I personally believe that it's unconstitutional as well.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a see, here's the thing, and this is the part that I think oftentimes gets missed, is that we have, not only do we have the science on our side, we have the law on our side. We just need people to step up and be willing to take those laws on and to address it, because I'm not an attorney, I'm not a doctor, I'm just a humble show host. But my understanding and talking to people knowledgeable about all of this says that if we would just fight the political fight the cultural fight, that we can win. And it's going to take people like you and perhaps people in my audience to pick up that fight and to keep going down the road that you're on. Now, the recent video that I had referenced, and it's what brought you to top of mind, was a video that was done by Live Action. They did I call it sort of like a sting, but it wasn't really a sting. They were just asking questions. They had somebody who was posing as a 16-year-old girl calling various Planned Parenthoods and asking questions about how easy it would be for them to transition. Now, you took that video and then you gave your commentary on what was happening, and it was very compelling. And again, after the interview, I'll play that for the audience so that they'll be able to see it. I've already actually played a couple days ago. I played the original video, but I want to hear your perspective on it. So, but go ahead and give us a little bit from what we've learned about Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, everything that's happening. They have gone, I hate to use the word, but they have sort of transitioned to be basically only about abortion, and now they're trying to become the leader or one of the top 2 or 3 in the nation when it comes to transitioning children. Tell us what you've learned.
Right. So Planned Parenthood began, and really the entire birth control and abortion movement began with eugenics in mind. Margaret Sanger was the person who founded it, and she was a very prominent eugenicist in her time. And she primarily advocated for the eradication of Black people, of those who had developmental disabilities or came from low income backgrounds from the population, through the marketing of these birth control treatments and of killing their unborn children. And unfortunately, in those communities, these clinics and these treatments are still very proliferative. So her ideology still lives on. And I think that in the same vein of those communities of people being abused, Planned Parenthood is now profiting off of another vulnerable community of young people who grew up experiencing an identity crisis, eventually for them forming into feelings of distress around their sex and the sex parts of their bodies. And they're going all into this. They've not only become the single greatest provider of abortions and birth control in the United States, they also have become one of the largest providers of these gender services as well. And as we recently learned with this video, they provide these treatments to minors at least 16 years of age. And there's so much at stake when you provide these treatments to children, because they're developmentally dangerous. They completely throw off your sexual, your reproductive, your physical development, and we have no idea how it affects cognitive, emotional, and identity development in the long term for kids. We already know that it's dangerous for adults, and it appears that the younger that you go with these treatments, the drugs, and eventually the surgeries, the more dangerous it becomes. I think that what they're doing is, they started with crimes against humanity, and they are going deeper and deeper and deeper into criminality.
It's not enough to just just kill preborn babies. Now they have to take the ones that were able to survive and try to destroy their lives.
And the
Here's
ones who are
a
struggling with what is a difficult part of growing up for everybody. Just growing, a lot of what these children are experiencing. Sure, many of them might have comorbid mental health issues. Many of them might be sexually traumatized or have some sort of familial trauma. But a lot of what they're grappling with is also just normal distress that comes with puberty and your body and everything in your life changing. And they're
no,
capitalizing off of that.
absolutely. There's even if we take out trauma, okay, if we just look at just growing up in today's world with so much information, so much input, both the emotional as well as the physiological stress upon children can be confusing. I mean, it can take them in the wrong direction. Quick story. I had a young friend when I was in grade school, okay, which was a long time ago, I'm willing to admit. But this young man, well, he was a kid, and he was one of my best friends. And I remember thinking it was kind of odd because he played with dolls, and we're talking like 6, 7 years old, and it was kind of odd, but didn't think too much of it. And as time went on, and yes, he started showing a little bit more femininity. He was clearly somebody who I think if he were growing up today, he would be a prime candidate for teachers or counselors or even parents, perhaps to start to think, oh well, maybe he's experiencing, maybe he's confused, maybe he needs to be transitioned. I looked him up. This is about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. Looked him up on Facebook. Just man's man, like lumberjack dude, married, kids, just totally dude, male. But I would think that if he had been growing up today, they would try to push him in that direction based upon some of his tendencies when he was a child. And that's a true story. So, not that I tell lies, I'm just saying that people will say, oh, that's a convenient story for this. No, I've told that story before. That's real stuff. So anyway,
I
so
mean,
let me ask you.
a lot of these children are just, they're experiencing gender nonconforming behaviors. Many of them are tomboys. Many of them are boys who might grow up being more feminine, but otherwise will grow up perfectly normally if you don't intervene with them, if you don't do any of the physical interventions. Most of these children will either tend to grow out of these behaviors or grow out of this distress. And that's been shown by, I think, one of the longest term studies that was done on children who are experiencing gender related distress. Most of them would, I think upwards of 90% of them would end up reintegrating with their identities with their bodies, with their identities as their birth sex. And I mean, I think that goes to show that this is not the cure at all for this distress that these children are experiencing. And they may not, what was also shown in this investigation was that, I mean, one of the phone operators admitted that you don't even need a mental health evaluation to get a prescription for hormones. All you need is to have a single appointment with the doctor. You don't need to have any evidence of having been seen by a psychologist or even a referral from one. So they're not even investigating what might be going to these feelings for these kids, and yet they're allowing them to make a lifelong decision based off of that and not giving them the chance to grow up.
Absolutely. Now your focus, and you said a few words there that caught my attention. In most, in some, and so correct me if I'm wrong, but your perspective is not necessarily against transitioning as a whole. It's about transitioning as children. If somebody grows up, they're 22 years old, they decide that they want to transition, should that be, in your opinion, should that be allowed?
I mean, I think that for a doctor to perform these treatments on anybody, regardless of their age, whether they are children, whether they are adults, I think that is cruel. I don't believe that this is medicine at all. I think that it's completely fraudulent. And I mean, there is no such thing as a successful transition because you cannot actually become a member of the opposite sex. It doesn't matter what drugs you take. It doesn't matter what surgeries you get or what parts of your body get put on or taken off or how you look. These patients are never actually going to become men or women. But that being said, obviously with children, there is an element of it being a developmental danger. So we need to focus on children first, and we need to protect them first. But I think that I don't believe that a total ban across all ages would be possible or practical. And you can't prevent every single adult from making dangerous decisions in their lives. But I think that even the adults are often from very vulnerable populations of people who are traumatized or have other mental health or psychiatric conditions. And the medical community is not really paying any mind to that at all. And there needs to be a lot more protections and a lot more gatekeeping.
So you don't see any scenario where somebody, an adult, obviously with children, very clear, crystal clear to me, this just should be a no-brainer, and I consider it to be child abuse. But you don't see any scenario where adults should be able to, and I guess the easiest way to put this, I'm trying to steer this a little bit into a biblical perspective. You believe that God created men as men, women as women, and that's how it is. Is that a fair assessment of your perspective?
Absolutely. I think that we are created male and female in God's image, and that our science reflects that.
Yeah, we can't have reproduction if everybody's transitioning. And I'm chuckling. I'm not trying to make light of the situation. I really don't. But it is one of those scenarios where children are victims, and when they are allowed to go through this, when they're persuaded in many cases to go through it, when they're counseled by doctors or counselors to go through this, that I consider to be child abuse. When you get into the adult era, the adult age, now all of a sudden I think that it does fall into a level of mental illness, and something that we recognized in the past, and that for whatever reason we no longer recognize. You are part of various organizations. You've talked about some of your goals, wanting to work with the White House, wanting to work with on both state as well as federal legislation. What else are you doing? Because this is who you've become. And I know that I'm sure you have plenty of other things that you do. But when people think of Chloe Cole, they think of trying to steer this nation, to protect children and steer this nation in the right direction when it comes to gender dysphoria. What are you involved with now? Are there any plans for the future? Anything that you want to that you're on the horizon that maybe people don't know about, maybe they do know about? What's the future look like for Chloe Cole?
So right now, I mean, for a lot of the 3 years that I've been working in this space, I have been focused primarily on legislation, but I also have a lawsuit of my own um, that I filed against my healthcare providers, against my doctors, who perform these treatments on me, in hopes that I can not only hold them accountable, but also make it so that any doctor who is even thinking about doing this to children ever again is scared out of doing so. They're shown the stakes of what could happen if they continue to do so. And I also speak to communities across the U.S. and abroad. I have spoken at various churches, and some of my favorite events have been the ones at colleges where I table on campus or where I give lectures, and I get to actually interface with students and with people my age, which, while I think it's extremely important to work on this issue on a legislative and broader level, it's something that primarily affects my generation and the younger generations. And it's not just older adults and legislators who need to be reached with by this message. It's people my age who may be struggling with their sense of identity around their sex, or are going through detransition, or are struggling with this either at school, or seeing this in their own families or with their friend groups, and want to get involved but aren't really sure what to do about it. I want to eventually empower my generation in dealing not only with this issue, but also with what I think is a broader identity crisis that has happened with the rise of the internet and with the loss of Christian and family values in our country.
Gotcha. That's a great answer. So, what is the next step? We know that I always see whether it's abortion or dealing with the transing of children, transgender issues in general. I've always seen this as you've got your faith-based attacks. You know, we have to fight on that front. We have to fight on the cultural front, and we have to fight on the political front, the legislative front. If you had to pick one where you're like, this is the one that we've got to go after immediately, this is step one, you know, to try to really bring this to an end. Where do you think where do we hit first?
That's a that's a good question because I think that all of those are equally important as each other. And without one, we won't be able to defeat this in full. But I think the first step probably would be renewing our nation and its faith because it's we once were a country that was centered around our churches and the communities around that. And with the loss of those values, I think everything in our country has begun to fall apart. Not just individuals, but also communities, our families, and entire institutions have just begun to crumble. And if we want to rebuild ourselves, we have to start with our faith first, and everything else will follow.
Very good. Well, then, quick question, and you don't have to answer this if you're not comfortable. What do you think of the new pope?
Uh, well, I don't know. I'm a Protestant myself, so it's not really something that like personally pertains to me, but seems like a cool guy. It's kind of cool to it feels like an American win to have the first
I
American
know,
pope,
right?
you know? And
How did
just
this
some
even happen?
I would say just some dude from Chicago, but he's not just some dude, like he's the pope now, you know?
Yep, exactly.
We get a little
All
piece
right.
of ourselves in the Vatican.
So I want to ask you one more question. But before I do, I want, how do people reach out to you? Are you doing speaking engagements? Can they, you know, is there a place where they can donate? Yeah, I know that as far as on X, that's where I communicate with you and I retweet a bunch of your stuff. It's Chu Cole, CHOOO,
Yep, it's three
COL,
O's.
yeah, three O's, COLE. So, and I'll put a link to her X
Yep,
down in the description. But
yep,
where
I'm
else
on
can people
X.
find you?
I'm on X. I'm on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube as well. And I'm starting to do more video content of my own, including I've been doing an interview series of other detransitioners, and I recently interviewed
Really?
a parent of a detransitioner. So that will be on my channel soon. And I am also doing speaking events. So I have an inquiries email in my bio and all of those that you can reach out to if you're interested. And I'm also doing, I guess you say, a tour of different colleges across the country for. I'm sure it'll probably go on for a few more years. So if I'm ever in your
Really
area, if
well.
I'm ever in your community, then come show up.
That's perfect. That's perfect. All right. My final question for you is this is this a fight for everyone? And here's what I'm asking. It's a challenging question, but I'm sure you'll be able to answer it. In other words, like you've been through this. You've been a victim of this. You have gone down to the depths. You've come back up. You're detransitioning. You're fighting the good fight. For some other people, maybe they're not parents, maybe they're whatever. There may not be as many, and we've seen this in the abortion arena. We've seen this in other arenas where people are just like, you know what? It's just like trying to get an 18-year-old to fight for Social Security. They don't really care until they're about 40ish, right? Well, how do we get, and because I'm on your side and I am in the older generation, I'm on your side. I fight this every single day with everything that I put out there. I put out at least a little bit of content about the gender dysphoria issue, as the gender medical industrial complex trying to protect the children and trying to bring a more faith driven light to an understanding of gender. How do we get other people of my generation to fight? How do we get them to listen to you? What is the best path forward for us to be able to fight this scourge on our nation?
I mean, I think this fight begins with just normal, everyday people. I didn't start out as a public speaker. I was barely out of high school when I first started to speak out. And even before that, it started for me with everyday conversations that I would have with people around me, my parents, my family, my friends, and eventually reaching out to and connecting with other people who have had similar experiences or similar feelings as me, challenging myself and challenging other people by who may not have who may not known before or who may feel very differently about the subjects. And you don't have to be a public speaker in order to effect change on this issue. I think that starts in these conversations that we have with the people around us. It starts on a very small scale. But I think that everybody can get involved on a larger level. Many of the people who I have fought alongside on this front were once just normal doctors, teachers, parents who ended up becoming whistleblowers, legislators, and activists. And it, I think the best thing that you can do is to start having those conversations, no matter how difficult, how awkward they may be at first, and then just seeing where it's going to take you and trusting the process.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Chloe Cole, may God bless you, and may He make your endeavors just shine, because I think that you're a superstar, and I think that the rest of the world is going to realize this very soon. Hopefully we'll see you spending more time in the White House. I'd love to see you working directly with the Trump administration and perhaps even the next administration and beyond to bring this issue to the forefront. Chloe Cole, thank you so much for being on the JD Rucker
Thank
Show.
you.